Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of How to HR. Hi, Kristy-Lee here, your host of this weekly video series. If this is your first time catching How to HR, welcome. It's great to have you here. This is a video series that we conduct each and every week on a Thursday here inside our free Facebook group, also broadcast out to our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So first, if you are not inside our Facebook group, I would love for you to join us in there because that's where all the fun happens. So if you're watching this on one of our other platforms, please just jump into Facebook groups and go to HR Support for Australian Businesses. That is our group, and that is where you definitely want to be if you are a business owner, a leader, or a manager of people. And from time to time, you need a little help with HR side of things, whether it's to do with the talking to people, communicating, the technical HR, the compliance side of HR. That's the kind of thing we chat about inside HR Support for Australian Businesses. For those joining me from the group, welcome. It is great to have you here. And this week we've got a really good topic to talk about. It's one of the things that I get asked about the most inside our people-powered HR membership community and also amongst my HR consulting clients. And it's a skill that I think we all know we need to do and get better at. But unfortunately, it's a skill that doesn't come naturally to many of us, particularly those of us that entrepreneurial, have our own business. And like things done a certain way, we sometimes find this particular skill a little bit tricky to get right. But it is a skill that is so important when it comes to growing your business and growing your team. What am I talking about? Today, we're talking about delegation. And specifically, I want to share with you 8 really simple steps to delegating any task with ease. I've been there and I know the feeling. You're juggling all the plates. You're spinning all the plates in the air. You're doing all the things within your business. And everything is sitting on your desk. Perhaps you've even found yourself to be the bottleneck in your business, even as you've grown your team, still because you want to have eyes over everything ends up at some point on your desk. And that's where it tends to get stuck. Are you guilty of that? I know I have been and still am from time to time. So this is something that I'm very, very familiar with. So let's chat about delegation. What exactly is it and why is it important? Put simply, delegation is just the art, and I do call it an art because it's not an easy thing to do, of giving the responsibility to someone else to get a job done, to get a task completed, or it might even be something really simple or something really complex like a big project. It's delegating not only the doing of the task, the operational components, but also, and probably most importantly, the responsibility for getting it done. Delegating doesn't mean you give it a go and then I'll swoop in and try and fix it later, or I'll swoop in when I feel like taking over, or if you don't get it done, that's fine, I'll take responsibility. Delegating is very much about delegating the responsibility for what needs to be done. And like I said, it is something that we tend to struggle with. We either struggle with doing it at all because, it's just faster if I do it myself, or it'll take too long to train someone, or they won't know how to do it how I do it. They won't do it the same way I do it. So you can struggle from that perspective in terms of actually delegating it all, or the other struggle is when you do delegate, but the task doesn't get done. Someone doesn't take responsibility. And that can happen when you're not delegating effectively. Because here's the thing, our team can't read our minds. Might be handy if they could, and sometimes we assume that they do, or they assume that they're thinking the same way we do. But we need to be really clear when we delegate in order to be able to delegate effectively. And that's what I want to chat to you about today. I want to share with you 8 simple steps that are going to ensure when you go to delegate next, it is a much bigger success. Ultimately, when we delegate, we don't want to be picking up that responsibility again in our business. We want to delegate it out to be done by someone else, perhaps forevermore. Maybe it's a one-off, but quite often this is passing on that ongoing responsibility. And I guess that's where I want to start, because that can be the first step in our delegation journey, and it is learning to let go. I know that can be a bit of a challenging idea for some people because we want to keep on top of things. If it's your business and you want to really eyes across everything, perhaps it's something that you really enjoy doing, perhaps it's something that you are particularly good at doing, or perhaps it's just something that you don't want to get wrong. You don't want the order going to the customer incorrectly. You don't want the wrong communication going. And so we tend to hold on to things for way too long in business and in leadership roles. Before you can effectively delegate anything to anyone in your business, you have to learn to let go. And this can be the hardest part for many, many people. You can say you're ready to learn to let go, but are you actually committed to that? And that is something that people do really, really struggle with. Thinking about business owners that say they're going to delegate and do delegate, but are hovering over the employee trying to get the job done, or constantly checking in, or picking it back up every time things might not be heading the way they want, without giving that employee an opportunity to try, maybe stumble along the way, but also figure out how to fix it and bring it back on track. They're jumping in before the employee's had a chance to effectively do that. Learning to let go is the first stage of effective delegation, because until you've done that, you are never going to commit to having delegated properly, and you're going to give your team the sense that you're not genuine and authentic in actually delegating to them. They'll know that you're only kind of halfway there, and therefore they won't take the responsibility that you want them to. So it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in those cases. So the first step to delegating anything with ease is to really, in your own mind, learn to let go. Now, I know that's not always easy, but what you can do is, if you follow these other steps, it's going to put in place for you, if you're finding this learning to let go part a bit tricky, the other steps I'm going to share with you are going to put in place some safeguards, some parameters that are going to make sure that if things go completely haywire, you're going to be able to pull it back, and you're going to be able to guide the individual in being able to pull it back. So trust me, if we do this whole process, you need to, and you can learn to let go. So that's the first step in delegating effectively. Now, step number 2, of course, is to choose wisely. And I'm talking about 2 key choices here: choosing the task and the responsibilities that you're going to delegate. If it's something that genuinely you have to do for some reason, don't delegate it, because it's not going to be effective and you're going to jump back in again. But also choosing wisely in terms of the person that you are delegating to. Think really carefully about their natural skill set, their unique talents and abilities. Think about their ability to learn new skills and new tasks. Think about the things that they would really want to learn, because when someone really has a craving to learn something in a business, they're going to be much more intent on doing it right for you than if you give a task to someone that loathes that kind of work. The classic example I always use is when businesses try and employ someone to do both their accounting and marketing. They are just the polar opposite headspaces and skill sets you'll find in someone. So if you get your bookkeeper to try and do some Canva templates for you to use in social media, they're likely not to really want to do it, and therefore are likely not to be as successful. So think about aligning the type of task that you want to delegate to someone where that is a natural fit for their skills, their expertise, their desire to learn, their unique gifts and talents. And different people on your team will have different unique gifts and talents. And I'm going to share some tips with you at the end about the types of things to delegate. But the things you should be delegating are things that are not in your zone of genius, the things that take a lot of time out of your day, that keep you away from doing the things you should be doing, the things that are repetitive, the things that are no longer part of your role in your business and that really should sit with another position in your team as you grow. So let's align what we're delegating with who we're delegating to. And that's step 2, getting clear on that first before you start the process. Step 3, you've got what you want to delegate and you've got who you're delegating it to. When you're first communicating to that person about what you're handing over to them, create the space for the discussion, and really importantly, talk to them about why, all the whys, in fact, why you're delegating this to them, why this task is important, why you need certain parameters in place. Help them understand where this task and their important responsibility in completing this task fits within the business ecosystem. You could explain it in a way such as, I can see that you're really keen to learn more about the design side of Canva, and it fits really nicely into your current role. Currently, that's sitting on my desk, and it's definitely something that I would like you to take on. It's really important that the design work we do in Canva is consistent with our brand imagery and our brand values. And because the communication that goes out via that platform onto our social media channels is the key contact point we have with new customers coming into our ecosystem. So I'd really like to pass that on to you today, and I'm going to walk you through what I need from that and why it's important in terms of where we're going with the business. So you are tying it back into the why. People always want to understand why. I don't know whether you were this kid, but growing up, my favorite saying was, but why? I was constantly asking my mother, but why, but why, but why? Because I always wanted to understand that. And it's human nature. Intuitively, our team also want to understand why they're being asked to do something. It helps give them that extra little bit of intent and seriousness about completing the task in the way we want it to complete. They'll be less flippant about it, basically. So step 3 is to tie it all back into a why. Now, step 4 is the obvious one. You need to instruct someone clearly. Don't assume that they can read your mind. Even though you think that might be an assumed thing, never, ever assume. You are much better off getting super duper granular with what you need them to do, how you need them to do it, when you need it to be done by, all of the details, than skipping over anything. Because although in your mind it's an assumption that that needs to be done every Friday, unless you communicate that to your employee, they're never going to figure that out. They can't assume. And I think it's a really unfair expectation to place on our team that they are going to suddenly know exactly the ins and outs if we haven't communicated it clearly. Now, this can be done in a whole different range of ways. Obviously, you can verbalize it with them in a meeting format, but I would definitely also encourage you to follow that up in writing or ask them to return it to you in writing so you can ensure they've understood the exact step that you're after. In my business, we use Loom videos a lot for our processes and procedures. So we would create a Loom video instructing someone how to do that process step by step, screen sharing, showing them what it's going to look like, showing them the next step from there. You might like to use that kind of method. It could be a video, could be a written procedure, but you must communicate and articulate very, very clearly what it is that you're delegating, how you need it to be done, and moving into step 5 now, what parameters you're putting in place. Now, parameters are important. This is one of your safety guards. When I spoke about that in Learning to Let Go, parameters are our safety guard to make sure someone's not going to go completely off course on us. So putting parameters in place. Now, some great parameters to put into place are when you want someone to communicate with you about how the project or the task is going. It might be parameters around decision-making. This is what we need to do. You can make all the decisions around that up to a certain level, for example, or perhaps within a certain budget. It might be you can spend up to X dollars to get this task done. If you need more than that, you need to come and see me for input and put a case forward for that. It might be you can approve expenses on this project up to $250, but beyond that, you need approval. Putting parameters in place keeps someone on the straight and narrow in terms of getting this task done in the way that you need it to be done. And again, this is your safety guard. If this is a big project and you want them to communicate with you, how often and how do you want them to communicate? I need an update on where this is at every Friday afternoon, just so I can understand where the project is going and where things are at. It might be, can you let me know when you've completed that task so I can just do a quick check for the first few times to make sure that there's no gaps and we've fully understood each other. It doesn't matter what the parameters are, but think about the things that might concern you when you're delegating this task and how you can avoid that concern by having checks and measures and parameters in place. Now, step 6 is to make sure the individual you're delegating to has the resources, training, tools and equipment that they need to do this effectively. You can delegate to them to design things in Canva, but if they have never used Canva before, you need to give them some training. It's unfair to delegate a task that someone isn't equipped to do. So they might need to upgrade their laptop. They might need to install a new app or a new program in order to be able to do this task. They might need to be given the gift of some time in order to be able to do this task. Because if they're already at capacity and you're loading something into their week that might be a 4-hour task, You need to help them figure out how they're going to manage their time in order to do that. So giving them the tools, the resources, the skills, and even needed the training is really important. Don't let them just go flying and hoping that they're going to get it right. It's important, if you want the delegation to be effective, that you set them up for success. And that might mean spending a bit of time training them. It could mean sending them off on a short training course or getting them to watch some instructional videos. It could be anything at all that's going to make sure they are set up for success on the task they delegate. Step 7 is a biggie. When we're delegating things, we are not simply delegating the task. We are delegating the responsibility. So we're delegating responsibility and authority as part of the process. And you, again, to really clearly communicate this to the individual. So you might be communicating to them that it's your responsibility to ensure this deadline is met. Again, a parameter here. If you can see any issues with that being achieved along the way, I need to know so that I can help guide you in the right direction. So the buck stops with them. You're not going to swoop in and take that responsibility, because that would undermine the impact of effectively delegating. So you need them to understand the buck stops with them. They need to own this task, whether it's something they're going to do every day, every week, or it's a one-off project or anything at all. They need to know that they ultimately have responsibility for delivering it. Giving them that responsibility and the authority around that helps them to really take ownership. And when someone takes ownership of something, they're much more psychologically, emotionally, personally invested in making sure it happens. This is not just something they're going to, robot through in the day. They're going to really take ownership. And particularly for your great employees, they crave this kind of responsibility. The people that are constantly wanting to push and learn and grow in their role and grow within your business, they love this stuff. In fact, this becomes one of your key engagement and retention strategies as you're growing your business. So making sure you're delegating that authority and responsibility. And finally, do a debrief, particularly for the first few times this task has been delegated to someone. So catch up with them afterwards. Just have an open discussion about what worked, what didn't, where they struggled, where they really shone and did a brilliant job, anything that they could see to make the process better. Sometimes when we delegate things, people see an easier way, a simpler way, a way of making it shorter, faster, simpler. And it's something that we might not have seen before because we were too busy in the trench doing the thing. But often when someone new, we get a fresh set of eyes on things, they come up with some really brilliant ideas. But if you don't debrief with them after the first, second, third time, they won't share those ideas because they won't have the forum in which to do that. Also, if there's been some hiccups along the way, a debrief is an awesome training opportunity to help your team member grow and to help them learn that we all make mistakes, we're all human. It's what they did about that mistake that might be the key thing, or how they can avoid that in the future. This is a great training opportunity for you. So let's recap the 8 steps. You need to learn to let go. You need to choose wisely as to which tasks you're going to delegate and to whom in your business. You need to explain the why. Why are you delegating this? Why is this important? Where does it fit into the bigger ecosystem of the business? You need to communicate and articulate clearly exactly what it is that you need done and how you want that done and what the timeframes are around that. You want to put parameters around things. These are your check messages and your safeguards so that someone knows at what point they should be contacting you throughout this process and where their responsibility lies. You need to ensure they've got the resources, the training, and the tools and equipment to do it effectively. You need to also understand that you're delegating responsibility and authority and conduct those debrief sessions. If you follow those 8 steps, I am certain that delegating tasks to your team, getting something off your plate and onto someone else's will become a much easier, simpler, and more successful process for you. So my challenge to you today is to pick one thing that's on your plate right now that could be done by someone else in your team and put this framework in place. Delegate it away, get them started doing that, and let me know. Come back into the comments and let me know how successful it's been and how relieved you are to no longer have to do that thing that you've been doing all this time. It really is a key to growing your business and growing your team, being able to delegate tasks effectively. It's also an amazing tool to grow and develop and nurture your people, be more effective employees, more productive, for them to grow their skill set. And it is a great engagement and retention strategy for your business. So I hope you're able to implement that. Take one thing, delegate it, get it off your plate and onto someone else's, and come back into the comments and let me know how you go. Now, that is a wrap for this week's How to HR. So thank you so much for joining me. If you are catching the replay, you can let me know in the comments that you're catching the replay, or if you're watching live and you have any comments, please do let me know. Now, as always, if you have a topic you would like me to cover in a future episode of How to HR, perhaps something that's niggling away at you in your business, something to do with your team, maybe it's a technical HR issue, or maybe it's to do with leading and managing your people, you can always put a comment under any of these videos and let me know what that topic is that you would like me to cover, and I'll be more than happy to cover that in a future episode of How to HR for you. That is a wrap for me today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll be back again next Thursday for the next episode of How to HR. Have a fabulous week.